Yeah, so if you can just start by telling us your name and what you do.
I'm Josh Rickel, and I am VP of Media Entertainment at Spredfast. I run the media entertainment and sports team here, so that involves from a sales side, from a business development side, and from a product side and partnership side, working with all of our broadcast, cable, sports team, league partners.
Very cool. And so yeah, so it's been about a year since you guys launched EchoGraph with Viacom, and we're really excited to kind of exclusively hear more about what's been happening since then and what some of the results are. So if you could maybe give a very brief overview of what it is and then kind of jump into what some of the results you're seeing with your partners.
Sure, yeah. So we met Viacom beginning of last year, right around the time leading into the upfronts, and we spoke specifically to the Velocity team, which had really been assembled at that time. And one of the big challenges that they faced was, they go and talk to brands about the value of the social audience for Viacom.
And that's specifically Velocity's goal. Yeah. They're selling kind of social and digital.
Right. Yeah. They're saying, look, we've amassed this massive social audience, and just like you amass a viewing audience or an audience for your digital properties, you want to monetize it the same as you monetize your broadcast and digital properties. And so the challenge that they faced, though, was we have good measurement for broadcast and we have good measurement for digital, but we really don't have that measurement or that currency in which we can quantify the value of that, the branded social campaigns across the different platforms. And so we looked at what they wanted to measure, and we also looked at what they were hearing from brands that they wanted to see, to craft a dashboard that would help that sales team tell a story about a campaign from start to finish, about across all the different platforms and how that branded content campaign worked. And so that could be, and Viacom honed in on two specific things: the social reach of that specific branded content, as well as the viral lift. And the challenge there is the branded content piece comes from authenticated data. We know how well this piece of content that we push out on a social platform performs from an engagement standpoint, because we get that data from the platforms. But then what Viacom's focused on, and the reason it's called the EchoGraph, is what was the echo that original piece of content or that call to action created across social. And so they had to look deeper into the overall social conversation around the specific keywords or hashtags associated to the original branded content, and measure that and tie it back all together. And so that's what we did. It's been hugely successful for them. They've been able to tell all sorts of different stories for the sponsors, in giving additional value as well, understanding the influencers who are part of these campaigns, understanding specifically what content performs better for certain campaigns, and discovering new audiences as well, both for themselves as well as for the brands that are the sponsors.
Very cool. So what do you expect, how do you think this is going to impact how they kind of present their new offering for 2015, 2016 at the upfronts?
Sure, and we, it's been an evolution as well. As we've rolled it out, new questions have arisen. We've added parts to the actual EchoGraph itself, and so as we roll into this upfront season, they're going to be able to look back at all the successes we had over the course of the past year and talk tangibly, I think, about how it performed and what it means to the sponsors. Moving forward, this has caused a lot of excitement in this space because it's showing a major media company who's monetizing social across all of their properties and telling a story to sponsors that is more tangible than it's ever been before. And that's really exciting for the sponsors. It's exciting for Viacom because they can justify the dollars that they're asking for these campaigns. And so I see interest from every other media company saying, I want to be able to tell a similar story. Now, my story might not be exactly the same as Viacom's story, but there's some underlying pieces to it that are consistent across the board that can help create a standardization or a currency, just like almost like a ratings point is for broadcast, to measure social audiences and the value of the social audiences.
Cool. And so EchoGraph isn't only exclusive to Viacom right now, or
EchoGraph is. And the name EchoGraph is a Viacom.
Okay, good. Thank you for clarifying.
Yeah. EchoGraph is a Viacom product, but what we look at as a way for media companies to have a place where they can bring all these different data points from owned content and earned content together to tell the story that they want to tell for their sponsors. So it's a product in that it's a framework, a software framework to be able to create that dashboard, but it's also going to be custom in that, again, individual broadcasters and cable operators are going to want to tell the story that's resonating with the sponsors that they're working with. Right. And as the data sets expand and as the information that we get from the platforms themselves expand and it becomes more nuanced and more enriched, we're going to need to evolve how we take that data and put it together and consume it and present it in a way that not just a research person can tell a story, but a salesperson can tell a story back to a brand or to a media agency.
Very cool. And well, two questions. First, are there any examples of sponsor integrations that you could talk about that Velocity team has used yet?
I think I probably shouldn't, but I know that there are specific ones that have been extremely successful for them. And what's interesting about it is the story for that specific sponsor was very different than a story they told for another sponsor, but it's still sitting on that core data set. So it's not like it's a report you spit out and just hand it over. You look at the data, you understand the data, and it becomes part of the overall story you told around the campaign. Because social is still just part of it. There's other stuff happening as part of the overall ad buy, but it's something that they can actually look to and quantify the social part of it, not as a just add-on throw-in, but as a distinct, valuable piece of the overall campaign.
And what platforms are you tapping into? Twitter, obviously. What other social networks?
It's predominantly Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. Let's see, did I miss anyone? I mean, it's pretty much those.
Cool. And is it kind of creating one number, one kind of?
It is looking at a social reach number across all of them.
So it kind of calculates your algorithm and gives them a really good kind of number to quantify all.
Yeah, a roll-up number, and then they can get a little bit more granular by platform if they want, because they want to see maybe what content performed better on a specific platform versus another, and so we have to be able to give them a way to get a little bit more granular.
Cool. And do you I think part of the evolution, if you guys remember, Trender before they were acquired had kind of a rating that wasn't just Twitter.
Right.
And I think now that Twitter has an exclusive relationship with Nielsen in the US, other companies abroad in similar fashions, do you guys have plans to create some kind of public facing, like you said, similar to a rating that kind of accounts for the kind of social graph?
I would say no. I don't think that would be fair to Twitter and to Nielsen and what Twitter is accomplishing with the NTTTR. I mean, their goal is to have a standardized measurement there. The way that we do things is very different than the way that they're trying to do that, because what they're trying to measure is conversation around a television show. What we're trying to measure, and we are measuring, is the impact of conversation on a social platform tied to a branded content experience. Now, that branded content experience might be tied to a program or a tentpole event, but what we're looking at is not the conversation around the show.
Right.
We're looking at the conversation around the campaign.
Got it. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So whatever the sponsor's doing with them.
Right.
Cool.
Now, do I think that there is a need for that measurement across social of TV conversation and tying that back to ratings? Absolutely. Because the more that we can show a causation over correlation, the better that all the platforms are going to be able to, the better the other platforms are going to be able to speak to the value of social for TV.
Cool.
And I think everyone benefits from Twitter seeking out that causation story.
Great. And are you seeing anything globally yet? Is this primarily EchoGraph and the tools just being used in the US?
Currently, it's only being used by the Viacom's Velocity team here in the US. There's interest in the core solution across the world.
Cool.
And I think it's not something that is restricted to media as well. I think brands, as they start to think about all the places that they spend their ad dollars and do branded content experiences across other media companies, they're going to want to look at how they perform across all of them to add the insights that they can use to then decide where to spend the money and where it's more beneficial for them. So I think it's something that can be much broader than it currently is being used for.
Cool. Yeah, and last question is anything, what do you see being the future of TV? I know it's kind of a broad question, but I'll throw out some kind of maybe examples or choices.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see TV everywhere impacting this a lot? The fact that now every single network has an app you can authenticate into to watch their content, or devices like, Amazon Fire or Roku or Apple TV. Is this creating more opportunities for doing this kind of stuff? Does it not make a difference as long as there's content?
Yeah, I mean, there are a couple things there. One, I think authentication is obviously very important, because by authenticating, we have a better sense of who you are and when you are viewing that content. So that becomes very important if you think about the personalization of content across all channels. The more I talk to media companies, the more the conversation shifts to, as long as I'm monetizing my content, I don't care where people watch it. And so if they're watching it on YouTube and I'm able to monetize it there, if they're watching it on Facebook and I'm able to monetize it there, those are the eyeballs I'm seeking. And I'm bringing that value back to my sponsors. Now, there's certain advantages to those specific platforms because of, like I said, more about the people and who they are and who's watching and when they're watching from a targeting standpoint. So the more that we see that across, more digital platforms, more mobile platforms, that's going to be interesting. It's what we do with that data. It's going to be really, really compelling. So that personalization and authentication, and like I said, wherever we can watch content, more opportunities, the better. I'm pretty excited because right now, I live here in Austin. I'm one of the first Google Fiber neighborhoods, and so I should be getting it pretty soon. And I'm going to be interested to see how my behavior changes because I have such a robust connection to the internet. In fact, this week I changed my plan because they were going to charge me more for HBO than I could just by going to get HBO Now. So it gives me more options. I get to spend my dollars, where I want them.
Very cool. And what are your favorite TV shows on right now?
One of my favorite TV shows on. So I've already through season 3 of House of Cards.
Oh, I'm in the middle.
I was always a big fan of 30 Rock. So I'm almost done with the Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt, which is fun.
Oh, nice.
I watched Downton this season. I've always been a big fan of Downton. I can't wait for Game of Thrones to start. I'm a big Silicon Valley. So, being in a startup and having been a part of the startup community here in Austin, I feel like I have a personal connection a little bit to Silicon Valley. So I'm a big fan of most of HBO's content. Always been a big fan of Modern Family.
Nice.
I'm also I'm a huge I love travel, and so I have big wanderlust, so I watch anything Bourdain puts out.
Nice.
There's a new CNN show called, I think, the Wonder List or something that's coming out, and I'm curious to watch that too. So.
What's the most exotic place you've been?
I guess that's relative. So I've been to I've climbed Kilimanjaro. I've been to Everest Base Camp. So I've been to Nepal. I've been to
nice.
All parts of Africa. I had the luxury of being in Zanzibar when there was no power for a month.
Wow.
So those are some
pretty what being disconnected's like.
Yeah, it was very disconnected. It was one of those weird situations where literally there was a cord from the mainland to the island, and the cord literally had been cut. It was like this long extension cord, and everyone was fighting over who was going to replace this extension cord.
Wow.
So yeah.
Great. Well, yeah. Thanks so much. I really appreciate it.
Yeah,
this is great.
It's my pleasure.
Yeah.